In my short time here on YouTube, there's been a lot of ups and downs. There's been no regular upload schedule, which, if I'm being honest, probably isn't changing anytime soon. There's been a global pandemic that's halted anything remotely resembling a personal life for myself, and I imagine many people, leading to a breaking point back in December all the way through January and early February when my channel went dark for reasons I'm not sure I'm ready to talk about fully. Other than that, I was trying to hide from feeling pain, and not just any pain, but the kind of pain that leaves you paralyzed, leaves you feeling alone and isolated. And strangely, there was one movie that kept seeping its way back into my mind that reflected the troubled emotional state I was in for that time. A.T. White's 2018 surrealist cosmic horror film Starfish is a deeply personal, ponderous feature debut from a writer and director venting his own grief and tragedy onto the page and eventually the screen. Prior to making this film, White, whom you may be familiar with as the man behind the 2012 fan film Spider-Man Eclipse, was in the process of developing a different feature film before realizing they wouldn't have a suitable budget to make it, and in this time, he had gone through a divorce and lost his best friend to cancer. A terrible series of unfortunate events that would understandably cause just about anyone to shut down. I wasn't sure how to process it. I normally process those things doing music, but I didn't have access to doing music at the time. I was in the middle of writing 2 other scripts, and my head was just in that format. I wrote it not expecting it to turn into anything. It was a cathartic necessity. The first draft was unfilmable. I left it alone for about a year until I was in a different space and rewrote it as something more cinematic. But yes, it was very much a way to cope with what I was going through at the time. And what came out of that pain, that need for catharsis, was a movie that dealt with a lot of similar emotions to what I was feeling. This melancholic exploration of pain and isolation, or more accurately, dissociation, all through the vein of Lovecraft, Silent Hill, and indie mixtapes. The movie follows Aubrey, a depressed woman who, aside from dealing with the trauma of a broken romance, is mourning the death of her best friend that she hasn't seen in years. At this funeral, Aubrey can't even interact with anyone. There's this emptiness behind her eyes. All she can think of is this stupid mistake she made, this one thing that entirely upended her life and made her lose sight of anything that mattered until it was gone. All that's on her mind at Grace's funeral is grief and regret. Why didn't I take that one phone call? Why did I sleep with that one person? Why was I so selfish? Why am I wallowing in self-pity? Why was I so stupid? Why wasn't I there when she needed me to be there? She tries to escape any interaction with anyone, any attachment to the real world, anything that makes her feel anything, because being alive is painful. It makes her sick. She just goes off and hides into the one place where she can feel safe, the one place where reality doesn't have to exist, Grace's apartment. The only problem is the warmth that was once there, the feeling of home, it's not there. No matter where she turns, there's constant reminders that she's gone and she can't come back. The friend that was there for her to let her know that everything was okay, the friend that was always there to tell her what she needed to hear, the friend that was always right, she's not there. All that's left behind are recordings and mementos. It's too much to process. So what happens when you can't process anymore? When you've hit your breaking point? When reality is just too fucking much? When trauma is just unbearable? You dissociate. And what is dissociation? Well, it's strange to say the least. You feel disconnected from reality, from your own body. You can't even tell what's real and what's a dream. You may not even know who you are anymore. It's a deeply confusing, distressing, yet somehow numbing feeling that's almost impossible to put into words. I felt it myself pretty much all of last year, and even that brief description I gave doesn't even begin to describe it. But this movie, it fucking shows it. When Aubrey wakes up the next morning, the power is gone. The streets are practically abandoned, snow having covered the town overnight. She doesn't think much of it at first, but soon she realizes the destruction, and then it appears. This horrifying, blacked-out, faceless blur chases her back to the apartment, trying to break through the glass door, trying desperately to finish her off. Then, out of nowhere, a stranger's voice speaks to Aubrey through a two-way radio and asks her to do the craziest fucking thing. Point the radio at the door and walk towards it. Miraculously, it works and the creature is gone, and then the stranger says something peculiar.
Well, that's encouraging.
What is?
You want to live.
We're just gonna sit on that line for now, but we'll come back to it later because it's important. After this, we get a lot of exposition of what's going on, the stranger being someone that Grace talked to, explaining how he knows about Aubrey. Also, apparently Grace, as well as some others, have been tapping into strange frequencies embedded in radio transmissions similar to the one that saved Aubrey's life. The seventh and final sequence having been recorded the night before and caused whatever the fuck is happening right now. All Aubrey is given to work with is a mixtape left by Grace labeled "This mixtape will save the world," and a message that she will know what to do with it when the time comes. Needless to say, Aubrey tries to avoid it, to just lie alone in this apartment of lost memories, shut herself off from any of the outside world, to just resign herself to nothingness and wait to die. Needless to say, that doesn't last. She can't just do nothing. If for no other reason, she has to see this through for Grace. She has to understand what her friend left for her, and this sends her on a surreal journey where each tape makes us feel even more of her dissociation. Reality is just falling apart and reshaping itself at the fucking seams, frantically changing visual style from animation all the way to Aubrey showing up on the actual set of the film she's from, all to illustrate this numb confusion of what's real anymore, if anything is. Hell, who knows? Maybe we're not even real, just characters in someone else's fucked up movie. And at every turn, these fucking creatures just keep showing up, these horrible, disgusting things that want her dead. What even are these things? Perhaps a sentient embodiment of Grace's cancer haunting Aubrey, but I think it's something else. I think these things are a metaphor for her depression, her suicidal thoughts constantly trying to overcome her, the only thing saving her being the signals in her mixtapes. This is when we're going to get a little bit dark. I said I wasn't going to get into any of it, but to move forward, there's no way to talk about this movie without talking about myself. I may not have had the same exact experiences that White had that inspired this movie, but they were enough to make me relate to this feeling of dissociation nonetheless. As I'm sure a lot of you have put together by now, I'm trans. And the year before last, I finally got the nerve to come out to my parents. All I remember now is the screaming. I sometimes remember the words, sometimes even the eyes, but most of the time, all I ever remember are disembodied screams. It was one of the most traumatic nights of my life, but I was able to work through it, or at least cope with it, because I had an escape. I had the movie theater. And then 2020 happened. And my coping mechanism was gone. I just sort of went through the motions. I did anything to avoid it. Then my pet died. One of my closest friends, because I don't have many friends, at least not many that aren't on the internet. And I just couldn't fucking cope anymore. The only two things I could think about now were those fucking screams and the image of a lifeless body where my friend once was. I couldn't feel anything anymore. I felt like it was a joke, like it was some elaborate play that was going to end at some point, like I was dreaming. It got so bad that I actually started self-harming. I would make myself bleed and not feel a goddamn thing. Like I wasn't even alive. And it only got worse because the paranoia of the wrong people finding my channel, of my life being turned upside down yet again, kept me awake at night, kept me in a constant state of paralyzing anxiety, and the channel went dark. I privated all my videos without warning and kept it that way for a couple months. Those couple of months felt like an eternity, as it didn't solve anything. Yet again, it only made my health worse. It got so fucking bad that I had to talk to my girlfriend one night and tell her that I had suicidal thoughts. I was scared that I wasn't going to have any control over my own body, and that would be the end of it. But I don't want to die.
Well, that's encouraging.
What is?
You want to live.
Just like Aubrey doesn't want to die. Even though these monsters, these dark, suicidal thoughts keep coming back, and the only way she overcomes them, it's not the mixtapes. They're a crutch on their own. They buy her a little time, but at the end of the day, she needs to face the monster head on, and in doing so, the monster cowers away. It's only as powerful as her will is weak. We're not done with the tapes yet, though, as we still need to answer the question, do these 7 mixtapes save the world? In the climax of the film, after Aubrey has collected all of the tapes and traveled all of this way to make it to a radio station where she devises a plan to play each tape in sync with each other, all 7 sequences of the alien frequency played at once through radio transmission, because there's a possibility that maybe, just maybe, the frequencies that open the doors that brought these things here can send them back, can possibly close the door. The individual frequencies by themselves are destructive, but together they might bring salvation. There's only one problem.
So you took the message they sent, the one that caused all of this. You put it back together for them, not knowing what it was, what it did. And you sent it back. You shouldn't have done that. You didn't close the doors. You opened them.
Aubrey realizes she can't just close the door. She can't just shut herself off from her problems, from her demons. Once that door opens, ready or not, you have to face it. The final moments of the film sees Aubrey walking off into the snow, approaching this spherical barrier set between 2 monoliths, and walking through that barrier, resigning herself to whatever force controls it. It's a strange ending that doesn't explain itself. An ending that simultaneously leaves me empty yet feeling every emotion in existence at the same time. It, much like the rest of the film, doesn't make logical sense. It's impossible to read anything literally. Signal Horizon's Tracy Palmer actually explains it best. Starfish is like a Coldplay concert. It's inexplicably touching, makes no sense, and yet you know exactly what is going on. The original ending of the film, before White rewrote it, at least from what I could gather, Aubrey apparently never left the apartment and committed suicide. And even in the rewrite, while leaving everything up to interpretation, he alluded that the final ending still in some way ends just as bleak. As if in the final scene Aubrey is resigning to death, to the monsters that haunt her, and I cannot accept that interpretation, not for myself, and luckily, I don't have to. As I said before, this film is not one to be taken literally, nor is its ending, and the man behind it, while having his own conclusions on what it meant, left it open for anyone to interpret it in any way they need to. And for me, what does that ending mean to me? First, we have to talk about one small detail that I've been avoiding this entire video: the title of the movie. Why is the movie titled Starfish? Is it just some obscure reference to Aubrey feeding some pet jellyfish a starfish or 2 in the movie? Or is there more to it? Starfish are actually known for their regeneration and adaptability. They're uncanny survivors. Aubrey is a starfish. This woman becoming overcome with trauma and dissociation, trying anything to hide from these demons that torment her, hiding behind pieces of music, art that reminds her of good times that are slowly being corrupted by her own guilt and grief, and in the end, realizing that the only way through it, the only way to grow and adapt beyond this feeling of nothingness, is to forgive and forget, to open all the doors, break the barriers, and let everything in. All the good and the bad, the joy, the pain, even the small things that didn't seem to matter at the time but now are louder and more important than any of the big things. It's terrifying and it feels impossible to do. I know, believe me, I No. But the only way to regenerate your heart or your soul is to let yourself feel everything. 2020 was a hard year for everyone, and I'm not going to pretend to know or understand everyone's struggles, but I feel all of us, in some way, in some form, lost. We lost something or someone that mattered to us. We lost our home, our livelihood, our drive to do anything that makes us happy, our faith, our innocence. Also, the lost stories.
Want to know the saddest thing about everybody being gone? All the lost stories. People are gonna die anyways, but their stories don't have to.
And I know many of us, as a result, felt that sense of dissociation, that numbness, but there's a way through it. And for me, this movie helped me find it. This elaborate, messy, horrifying, beautiful visual mixtape of a movie may not save the world, but it saved mine. And I hope by talking about it, it can maybe save yours too.
Bones sinking like stones, all that we fall for. Homes, places we've grown, all of us are done.